what's going on, Evenant? Big Jer, back with you again. And today we're going to be finishing up mixing this cue. So, up until now, it sounds pretty good. We've done a very good job, gain staging everything. We've done a good job cutting our lows, and we have everything tuned up. Anything that you guys have brought in, if you're not using your stems, I showed you guys how to use Spectrum to tighten that tuning up. So at this point, we're sitting pretty good. We should all have a nice, even mix. Now, we're going to use, before we get into my rule 4, we're going to have a little like sub kind of thing in here. This is not really a rule or a tip. This is just a good practice I like to do. Basically, you want, like when you're EQing things, right? You want to basically make the sound even. So it's like the lows aren't too low or the highs aren't too high. You understand? So the sound comes through the speakers evenly and the listener gets to enjoy the whole sound. So there's actually a really great free plugin that helps with this. Well, if you're in Ableton, you also have Ableton's version of it too. But I feel like Xfer's version is just a little bit easier to use. I'm talking about OTT, over-the-top compression. Okay? Let's go ahead and check this out. Let's go ahead and use it on, let's start with some music here, and I'm going to go ahead and use it on the drone, and we'll see what it does to the drone. Okay, this drone is going to have a lot of, well, you know what? Let's just open up another EQ real fast, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, before we even shape it, this is what we're going to see here. So this thing's jumping up and down all over the place. You got more lows than highs, and it's a rather uneven sound. And you could even see the signal itself, and it's a drone. What do you expect, So we have to control the drone if we want to hear it, okay? So let's go ahead and use our OTT. And again, I feel like, well, you know what, we're not going to have an OTT lesson, but, OTT is Xfer's version of Ableton's multiband preset called OTT. So here's multiband and here's OTT. Just so you could see. So this is Xfer's version of it here, and this is the Ableton version. Now, real quick, let's just talk, while I have these both open, let's take 30 seconds to talk about exactly what's happening here so you could use it better. And I'll tell you why I recommend Xfer's over Ableton's for beginners. Cool. So over the top compression. This is going to be basically what you got here is dual compressors. Okay, you've got 3 of them because we've set them to different frequencies, high, mid, and low. And you've also got one on this side and one on this side. So what ends up happening is you've got downward compression and upward expansion on this side. And on this side, you've got upward compression and downward expansion. Okay? So basically anything, and then this is the threshold, and this is the threshold here. Okay? Same thing here. But this is, you see how this is connected, right? And this is not. So basically this is like a way more complex version of this, or you could think of it as this is a much more simplified version of this, but it definitely gets the same OTT result. So it's a bit easier to use for beginners. This time here, okay, so if I go over here, you can see this is the attack and release, and I can move these separately if I want. So what this time knob does is it grabs all of these guys, and as I move this, it keeps these ratios, like, I guess, chained together, and then moves them in relation to each other. So again, it holds that OTT preset and just kind of moves it around a bit. Then you've got your depth, which is your amount knob, so wet and dry, basically. And that's really the whole show, and this is just a much easier version to use than this. So basically what we're going to be doing is, so we've got, upwards and downwards compression, okay? So basically what happens is anything that's not reaching this line gets pushed up, and anything that goes above this line gets pushed down. So you can see how this really helps even out our sound. In addition to that, we can move these around and use this almost as a dynamic EQ sort of. Let me show you what I mean. So as I take this, one other thing to be aware of is this is very powerful down here. So if I turn down, so we got upward and downward compression, right? So if I turn down the downward compression, obviously the upward compression gets stronger, right? So, and vice versa. So these are the ways that I like to control this this plugin. I like to start by using my depth knob, and since this is an quote unquote over the top compression, I never go more than like 30-40%, meaning I still have like, 60 to 70% of the original sound. Cool. Okay, that was a mouthful, right? Now we understand why OTT is so important and popular in modern music. And it's free too, so go download it. Cool. Let's do it. Here we go. So I'm gonna bypass it again so we can hear what's going on. Great. And this is still with the wet and dry down, so it's going to be the same. And then I'm going to start bringing it up, and you're going to notice it get fuller. All right. Notice that all those we're hearing more highs. Let's listen to this again. Right? It's a much more even sound. Okay, so now we could pull down maybe a little bit on the downward compression and get a little more upward compression, because basically the only downward compression that's happening is this part right here. Probably all this other stuff is way under the threshold. So let's pull it up so it's even with this guy. Loving that. Now this to me, this is more of the space or the reverb in the sound, and this is going to tighten up the sound. That's just my experience with this. So if you want to sound bigger and like spacier, go over here. If you want to tighten up on that reverb, go this way. So I'm going to actually go this way. Like night and day difference. So now people say that moving these are a little aggressive, but I don't mind being aggressive, I guess. I like to dial in my sound a little bit. So this is how I start. I start with my wet and dry or my depth. Then I adjust this to taste, getting a little more upward compression. And then I move these guys around to really dial in my sound. Like this would be like an EQ. Let me show you what I mean. Perfect. Pulling out some of the lows, or I'm going to pull out most of the lows because, those booms and the subs are going to be doing its thing. Plus, I got them rolled off anyway, so. Wow, listen to that difference. OTT is probably one of my favorite plugins for evening out these sounds. Especially, we're learning to be sound designers now. One of the tricks to sound designing is getting an even sound, right? I mean, anybody could record a cool sound, but it's getting it to stand up against those quote unquote professional sounds that really makes a good sound designer, right? Well, one of the things anyway. So OTT, you know me. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and do that to like almost every other sound to some degree or another. And I don't feel like it's too much. First of all, this is a very common practice. Second of all, remember, we're only right here at like 30%. That means 70% of the sound is still not even being touched. It's just this is so over the top that the 30% of this is like it just gives it's and we are mixing in parallel here, whether you see it or not. We don't actually need another channel. With a wet and dry knob, you are absolutely mixing in parallel. You are absolutely mixing in parallel. You have half the signal, well, more than half the signal is clean, and the other 30% is this over the top thing. Cool. Great. Let's move on. Let's do it to the ARP. Let's get that to sound a little more even. Okay, and OTT for me usually goes first. I like to even my sound out first. Cool, cool. Digging it. It's moving on here. And again, you could do these individually. We don't have to listen to them in the mix yet, because basically all we're doing is even out the signal. So if I could hear it evenly, then good, and we'll dial it in when we start. This is really just like, again, this is part of the maintenance and or cleaning part. This really isn't like a tip or a trick. This is just getting your stuff clean. Like, I don't have to tell you to use shampoo in the shower, right? You just know. And again, a good common practice here is to just get rid of these lows, because remember, I believe it was one of our rules to control your lows, and that's something that we don't. It's not just this that's doing it. We might as well not even compress that stuff. That's like a crazy difference right there. Crazy difference. Cool. Pulsar. Here we go. Now we start clipping a little bit right here, right? Now we got these guys. So I can go ahead and just turn down my input and or output gain. Perfect. Remember, that's why we have these meters on the end of all the devices. So keep your eye on these, and anytime you add something, make sure you're never in the red. I like to mix clean. That's just my style of mixing. See, this was a little bit piercing for me. Perfect. Perfect. It's not always volume we're going for, it's even we're going for. Sometimes that makes it sound louder for sure, but definitely don't check volume in your mind for louder. I'm sorry, definitely don't check volume for quality, if that makes sense. Just because it's louder doesn't mean it's better. You want to compare frequencies and evenness. Cool. Nice. Okay, let's see how that sounds now with the music being a little bit OTT. All right. Looking good. Let's go down here to our bass sounds. Get a little OTT on my digi. Hell yeah. That really brought that guy out. And now Aquaman. All right, let's see what it does to Aquaman, because I know we've got some, it's a little bit. You know what I'm going to do first actually is go here. Let's see. Let's actually do it right here. I'm going to make a cut in between. And I'm going to go. Let's see. Actually, no, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do first is I want to even these out before I bring my OTT on board, okay? So what I want to do is just get a regular compressor, and we're going to go ahead and turn this up a bit. We're going to get it like that. We're going to go peak. And when you're messing with compressors, I would always recommend freezing and flattening so you can see what you did, to see if it's exactly what you saw in your head. And there we go. Almost, right? Almost what I wanted. It's a lot more even than it was, but not quite exactly what I want. So I'm going to give a little more and pull down a little more on this. Let's try that. All right, it's a lot more even now, so it's good. And we'll bring this over here. Cool. So now I think, cool, so the volume's a little more even for me there. And now when we bring the OTT in, it'll definitely do its job. Getting a little bit of a sticky thing there, so let's go into here and make sure that our fades are kind of doing their thing so we're not getting any weird little whatever the hell that is. There we go. And I'll do this at the end here too. Perfect. There we go. Wow. Once you get good at OTT, man, life is a lot better. Like I said, I'm not totally sure about that sub yet there, because it's not a weird spot, but I don't know if I want there to be sub there or not. So cool. Sounding good. I'm digging it. And let's go over here to Dumbo. See what's happening with Homeboy. Let's go ahead and grab our plugins. And now this in the mix, I know I'm going to want the highs to pop out a little more, so I'm going to boost them a bit here. Cool. Let's see how that sounds. Beautiful. Beautiful. Go over to our sub, make sure we're not getting any kind of weird little, I noticed a little click there, so let's just make sure we're not getting anything. Nice. Just a little guy on there is good to make sure we're not getting any kind of, I don't want any, crackles happening or anything. Sometimes these loud sounds like a sub, when they stop all of a sudden, you hear a little pop. We could just do a little tiny fade that nobody will ever notice, but it'll get rid of that little pop. All right, looking good. So now we're pretty even Steven, right? Digging that. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the next mixing tip.